everybody. Here we are at Whole30 day 17. I'm Elizabeth from ourpaleofamily.com, and I apologize for my voice. I really like puns, and I am not a very good singer. So there was this card that they had at the Hallmark store for a really long time, and it had a picture of a tiny little horse on the outside of the card, and when you opened it, it said, "I would sing you happy birthday, but I'm a little horse." Do you get it? So anyway, I think that's really funny. So I'm a little horse today, not with the 4 legs, but with the scratchy throat, so I apologize. But I taught my class today, so I've already been talking, and it has held out, so I assume it will hold out through this recipe. So tonight's dinner is turkey meatballs, and this is on the blog already. It's called Turkey Meatballs with Paleo Trim Healthy Mama E option. So if you're not familiar with Trim Healthy Mama, they basically have E meals, which stands for energizing, means they're a higher carb meal, and S meals, which stands for satisfying, they're a higher fat meal. And these meatballs are really, really good. I love them. And it was something that I had planned for the Whole30, but then when I went back and looked at the recipe, I realized the binder in the meatball is oatmeal, and so oatmeal is a grain. You can buy gluten-free oatmeal, and I do fine with eating it occasionally, but on Whole30 we do no grain, so I'm going to substitute some almond flour for the oatmeal. And there's also some stevia or honey, some sort of sweetener in the sauce, and we're just going to leave that out, and it'll be perfectly fine. On day 17, our taste buds are adjusted, and it will probably taste sweet enough as is, or frankly, if you have a cold like me, you probably can't taste it anyway. And if you've never had this dish before, you won't be expecting it to taste a little bit sweet. So just go with it without the sweetener. I'm sure it will be delicious. These are really good, simple meatballs with a yummy sauce. And I have a couple sweet potatoes in my oven. Typically, I would serve this over rice. That's how you'll see it pictured on the vlog. And I've just served my family rice a lot the past few days, so I'm doing the sweet potatoes instead. I'll get to partake of that as well. And then our veggie on the side is going to be more okra, because I bought all that okra at the farmer's market, and it doesn't have an indefinite shelf life. We need to cook it, so I'll just saute that in the pan like I did the other night. And I have my tabletop burner here, so I'll actually show it to you. The other day I did it on the stove. So I'm going to get started making my meatballs, and the first thing I'm going to do is add all of my, I'm going to try not to break some things. I'm going to add all of my dry ingredients to my mixing bowl. So the first ingredient is listed as oatmeal, but we're just going to sub out 1-for-1 almond flour. Again, I buy my almond flour from Welby's. It's an online company. I have not found it in any stores locally in North Carolina. But it's a really nice, finely ground almond flour. Great taste, very decent price. And so that's what I use. That's the one I like the best. I need some onion powder. So a lot of these recipes I have really tried to make quick for a weeknight. So you could chop a real onion in here if you wanted. There's no problem. But it's a lot faster and easier to spoon out. My onion powder is so dry, it really clumps together. But it's faster to spoon out a little bit of onion powder than to chop an onion. So I'm just trying to make it easier and faster. So that's why I've done that. But feel free to use a real onion if you would rather. And also 1/4 teaspoon of paprika. And I need a full teaspoon of salt. Actually, you know what? I'm going to cut back on that a little bit, because as I'm looking at my package of meat, I asked my butcher for 1.5 pounds of turkey breast, and he only gave me a pound. It's actually 1.16 pounds. So I'm going to cut back a little bit on my seasoning because of that. And then black pepper, it calls for 1/2 teaspoon, and I'm just going to grind some in. And so those are my dry ingredients, and I'll just use my fork and give that a little stir real quick. And then I'll add my wet ingredients, and I will add my meat last, because it will help the meatball to stay more tender if I don't overwork it. So I want to get all of my binder and my flavorings mixed together, and then I'll just kind of fold in my meat at the end. Okay, so there's my dry, and my wet consists of egg whites, and I just like these carton egg whites. I use them enough, like not in the morning when I'm eating eggs, but in various recipes. So I've got 1/4 cup of egg whites. I'll just pour that in. I'll need this measuring cup later, so let me rinse it. Okay, so my wet ingredients are egg whites, Dijon mustard, and I usually do not measure. I just squirt some in, but I'm going to be good, and I'm actually going to measure. So there's my teaspoon. Because then it's a mess, and you've got to get it out of there, and that kind of drives me crazy. That's why I usually just squirt that kind of stuff, but I was good, and I measured today. And it was Dijon mustard, and then spinach. So I consider spinach a liquid ingredient. And what I'm going to do with my spinach is run it through my little mini food processor, mini chopper here, to just get it really, really fine. You don't have to do this, but it's the way I prefer it. And the recipe calls for a cup I believe, 1 cup. So I'm just going to scrunch in. That's about a cup. I hope y'all are realizing from my cooking videos that most of the time when you're cooking, you do not have to be really precise. Don't worry about it. In baking, you need to be a little more precise. There's chemistry involved there. But in most cooking, it's not necessary. There's this one leaf in here that will not chop up. That's hilarious. But you know what? I have a plan for him. So he's coming out. And what I'm going to do, I don't know if I told you this before, but because my butcher thought I only needed 1 pound of turkey instead of 1.5 pounds, I have just pulled out a few cremini mushrooms. There aren't mushrooms in the recipe, but you know, mushrooms have kind of a meaty texture and even sort of a meaty flavor. So I'm going to bulk up the volume a little bit by adding a few mushrooms. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the spinach, and I just lost my train of thought. I'm going to chop them really finely. And in this little mini chopper, if I put them in whole, they would just spin around. They wouldn't chop up. You're going again, little spinach leaf. So I'll just rough chop them so they will do something in there besides just spin around. Okay, so let's give this a whirl, and I'll show you how to get real teeny tiny. So again, this little food processor just has 2 buttons, chop and grind. And the blade spins one direction, and the blade spins the other direction. And so I just switch back and forth, and I feel like it typically gets things mixed up and chopped pretty well. Do that one more time. Okay. All right, so we'll get this out of the way. Get that blade out of there. Okay, so now I have my wet ingredients and my dry ingredients minus my turkey. So I'm just about to start making my meatballs and need to cook them. So at this point, I'm going to turn my skillet on and get a little bit of oil in there. So I'm going to use avocado oil tonight. It's just a nice neutral flavored oil. And I just want enough to coat the bottom of my skillet. So I'll start with that. As it warms, it'll spread out a little bit more. And I'm going to turn my heat to about medium high. I'm going to try not to let it get smoky. So we'll see if I can control the temperature tonight. So I'm just going to mix all of this together. So I kind of had my liquid stuff in a well there in the center of my dry. I'm just mixing all of this together. So all these flavors and textures will be well incorporated throughout my meatball. So when I was thinking about this meal, I thought, oh, you know, I don't have a lot of okra left. Do I need to cook another vegetable? But I've got the mushrooms now and the spinach in here, and we'll have the sweet potato, which has got lots of vitamins in it. We had leftover egg roll in a bowl for lunch today, so that was just full of vegetables. So we've had a good number of veggies today, so I'm okay with this. I'll just make it easy on myself. All right, I think I'm done with this. Let me move this out of the way. And now it's time to add my turkey, and this is turkey breast. Typically I will buy the dark meat turkey, but again, I wrote this recipe to be a Trim Healthy Mama meal, which is a lower fat meal. So I bought turkey breast. Actually bought this a couple weeks ago and ended up not using it, so it's been in my freezer. And my trash bag fell. So now I'm just going to use my rubber spatula and fold this in. This is a real pain in the neck if you have forgotten to get your meat out of the freezer ahead of time and it is still partially frozen, because then you've got to slowly defrost that turkey, and it cooks really fast in the microwave. So if you use the defrost on your microwave, it'll end up cooking a little bit. And I say that because I do it all the time. I'm forever forgetting to get my meat out of the freezer. So hopefully you do better than me and you get it out ahead of time. This time I actually did. I got it out 2 days ago, so it is fully thawed. So I'm kind of smushing, just getting this really mixed in. These are really green. This would be great for like a Dr. Seuss celebration for some green eggs and ham, or St. Patrick's Day. I don't know why I thought of green eggs and ham. It's not eggs or ham. That is really silly. St. Patrick's Day is what I should have said. Okay, so I can still see, like every once in a while I'll move my spatula and there will be a chunk of turkey that's still nice and pink. I want all my turkey to be green. Okay, and I'm probably going to have to make my meatballs in a couple batches. I don't think I'll get them all in the skillet. Although I might with only a pound of meat instead of a pound and a half. But I'm going to get a pan out just in case. These little aluminum pie pans, most of them have come from my grandmother. Occasionally I'll get them from my parents. They'll bring us some food. They're from like a grocery store bought pie. But they're so useful. I use them all the time. I never buy pie crust or pie like that, but I have all the pans and I use them a lot. Okay, so I love these little spring-loaded, they're called dishers. Some people just call them ice cream scoops. But they're really called dishers, and they come in all different sizes. I bought mine, actually I bought some at a kitchen supply store locally, and then I bought some online. But the problem with buying them online is that they're numbered. Like this is a number, I don't know, I'm not seeing it on here right now. Like this might be a number 3. I don't really know what the numbers are. But when you search, when you look for these, you'll find them. Okay, this one's a number 3, this one's a number 4, this one's a number 5. And I found the descriptions kind of difficult to tell, you know, what size is that really going to be. So if you can find them locally in a kitchen supply or a restaurant supply store, that would be better. And they're not very expensive. So I use these for making meatballs, when I make cookies, and you get your cookies all the same size. So you can tell, so because I used my food processor to blend up the spinach and the mushrooms, everything was very fine. They're just naturally very compact. If I had larger chunks, like if I did not have a food processor and I simply used a knife to chop up the spinach and chop up the mushrooms, then my meatballs would not be as compact and they would tend to fall apart while cooking. And so I'll show you what I would do to help prevent that. I'm not needing to do it. I'm using my finger to kind of just put everything in so I end up with a round shape and not little splayed out edges. But you could use your disher and then pop it into this hand and just kind of roll them up, and that would help keep everything together. They would stay together really well. And if it starts sticking to your hand, you could just wet your hands with a little cold water and then they won't stick. And if I need to do that, a lot of times I'll use another one of these pans or a plate or something and I'll just do a bunch of scoops, scoop, and get all my scoops out, and then I'll go back and I'll wet my hands and I'll roll them all that way. Does that make sense? All right, so we'll just brown these on maybe like 3 sides. I won't be real particular about getting them brown on every little bit. And then I'll take them out, I'll put them in this pan, and then when they're all done, I'm going to build my sauce, and then I'll put the meatballs back in, and they'll just kind of braise in the sauce until we're ready to eat. So I'll just flip them over. I know I need to turn my heat down just a little bit. So I'm using my non-stick skillet, so just a stainless skillet. It's not coated because I want those little bits of browning that come onto the bottoms. Does that make sense? If I used a non-stick skillet, I wouldn't get those brown bits, and all those brown bits will add a lot of flavor to your dish. So I use this skillet on purpose. So I'll get a little bit of sticking, and that's okay. Just pry them right off. And don't go to sleep. And then I'll deglaze my pan when I add my sauce ingredients. And I'll have all that added flavor in my sauce. So as I flip them over, I have a little bit more space in there, but I also need a little bit more oil. It's dry in the center of my pan. Let me add a little bit more. And scoop another one in there. And I can get a couple more in. I'm just trying to get them cooked as quickly as I can, and then get my sauce going. They're going to cook faster in the middle, so you might have to kind of rotate them around. So they sort of end up looking like little triangles instead of round meatballs, but that's okay. Triangular shaped meatballs taste just as good as round ones. I'm hoping I can get this in just 2 batches. This is a little bit tedious. And you know what? I've made the meatballs in the oven. You can just make your meatballs and put them on a sheet pan with some parchment paper or aluminum foil. Bake them in the oven. It probably would take only 15 to 20 minutes. And then you don't have to stand here at the stove. But then you still have to make your sauce, and you wouldn't have that yummy flavor in the bottom of your skillet for your sauce. So it's a trade-off, but it is certainly an option. And I believe I have on, when my hands are clean I'll look, but I believe I have written it with a version for the Instant Pot. I have another turkey meatball recipe, this turkey stroganoff meatballs. And that may be the one that has the Instant Pot instructions, which you can certainly make this in the Instant Pot. The only problem with that is the surface is smaller, and so you have to cook the meatballs in a lot more batches, and and you're reaching down in deep. It got a little irritating to me. So if I were to cook them in the Instant Pot, I would brown them on the stove and then put them in the Instant Pot. And really, they cook so fast, I don't know that there's really any benefit to using the Instant Pot. Alright, I'm noticing all the things that are not level in my house, and all my pans that are sort of warped. It's so funny. Okay, so I'm going to start my flipping to get the second side browned, and then we'll get to move on to our sauce making. So I love to cook. I've been cooking for a long time, and I have accumulated a lot of kitchen tools and gadgets, and I actually use them all. And one thing that I think I asked my husband for this for Christmas when we were still dating, we weren't married yet. I said, oh, I want a flat whisk. I've seen some chefs use that on some cooking shows, and it seems like you can really, you know, like a round whisk is harder to get in the edges, so this has more straight sides, and I want a flat whisk, and he got me this flat whisk, and I love it. It's perfect. I'll show you as I deglaze my pan, because it's really flexible, and it'll allow me to really get in there, and it's metal, and I'm working with a metal pan, and I can just scrape all those brown bits up. And they make them coated like this. So if you were using a nonstick pan, you could use your coated flat whisk and do the same thing. And it works very, very well. So these guys that were in the middle are going to be done faster because they've got that big burner just right under them. You see how nice and brown these are? They are not cooked all the way through to the middle, but that's all right. They're going to cook when I put them back in the sauce. These guys over on this edge didn't get quite as much of the burner. They could be a little browner, but I just want to move on. They'll be fine. So I'm going to get all of my sauce ingredients in the pan and make sure my heat is up. They're so pretty and green. I just love it. Do you remember, gosh, this was a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago. I think it was Heinz started making green and purple ketchup. They were trying to get kids, I don't know, I assume it was to get kids to like the ketchup more. Don't kids like ketchup enough? Anyway, it just reminds me of that. Oh, look how good and gelatinous my broth is. Can y'all see that? Oh, it's blobby. I love it. I love it. That's just what we want. Okay, so I need 1.5 cups of broth. Yes. We want that sizzle. It's going to, whoop. It blobbed all over my counter. Okay, so right away, while I've just got my liquid in there, I want to scrape. Scrape up all that brown stuff. That's the fond, that's the fancy cooking word. It's all that flavor. As it starts to bubble, even more of it will come up. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of my liquid ingredients in. I need 2 teaspoons now of Dijon. Whoa, that's too much, huh? I won't tap all that out. Okay, because Dijon mustard can be overpowering. 3 tablespoons of coconut aminos. So I'll just take the lid off. This is a 2 tablespoon measure. So I'll do 2 and then half of 1. And I'm not going to do arrowroot, I'm going to do the glucomannan, so I'll work that out in a second. And I need 1.5 tablespoons of tomato paste. So I've got a new tube of tomato paste here. So I just need to poke that. And I need 1.5 tablespoons, so I'll mostly fill up my 2 tablespoon measure here. Plop. Okay, and then let me stir all this in. Just get all of those ingredients incorporated. It's nice rich red color. Ooh, this will be good for Christmas. The sauce is red, the meatballs are green. I think they haven't looked as green in the past because I've had dark meat turkey, maybe. I don't know, they just look greener to me today. Okay, I can tell, I can feel my skillet. There are a couple places where the fond is still in the bottom, so I'm going to focus right there and try to scrape that up. Okay, now I'm going to mix my glucomannan, which I just want 1/4 teaspoon of that, and, oops. 1/4 teaspoon with a couple tablespoons of cold water. So I'm going to get that all dissolved. And I've shown you before in some of the other videos, this will set up really fast. And I want to pour it in while my liquid is boiling. And it will give my my sauce a nice thickness, a nice silkiness. It's adding a little fiber supplement, which is good for all of us. And even though I can't taste a whole lot, I'm going to go ahead and give this a taste. Just to make sure my seasoning is okay. This is going to be really good because that last batch of broth I made is really good broth. It really makes the difference. I can taste it, and it does actually taste sweet to me. I think that's the tomato paste. So I'm going to be real happy without the honey or aminos in there. So then real carefully, just get your meatballs back in. Try not to let them flop because that liquid is hot and it'll burn you. So carefully shove them back into the pool of delicious sauce. Here we go. And let them all kind of hunker down in there. Everybody's sort of covered. Toss them around a little bit gently. They're pretty tough. They're not tough like in a bad way, but firm. They're not going to break apart real easily. But do treat them with care. Flip them around a little bit. You can use your other cooking utensils and to get them all covered. And they're just going to simmer away in there. And I'm actually going to switch this out and put it on my other stove, and so I can cook the okra here for you. So here it's nice and bubbly, and those are just going to simmer away until everything's ready. On low to medium low, depends on your particular stove, your altitude. You know, a lot of things affect that. Let me grab my bacon fat. So we love this okra. I told you before I've made fried okra that's really oven fried, and that's really, really good. And we love that. And I've made some okra fritters. Those recipes are on the blog. And they're all really, really good. But we already have the almond flour in the meatballs. And so we're just going to go simple and do a pan saute. But I do put a good amount of oil in my skillet. So this is my my bacon drippings. It's 2 tablespoons. And once that melts down, I'll just pour my okra in and fry it up in the skillet, and it's delicious. So I've got my nice clean cooking area ready, and my bacon drippings have just melted down, and I'm going to gently pour my okra in, and I'll spread it out. That's the perfect amount. For my family, I like to have covered the bottom of the skillet. So that's about what we have there. I can squeeze a little bit more in, but that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to get salt and pepper on here, and then I'll flip it all around so they're all coated. What do I do with my pepper? And that's it. Just your cooking fat, the salt, and the pepper. And that will be so good. The okra has such a neat flavor, and it'll get nice and brown and crispy. It's delicious. And you know what? I just remembered, as I've started writing up these blog posts for y'all, and so I'm saying we're starting the Whole30 on October 1st, but I started ahead so that I could have recipes and videos ready for you. And as I'm getting my posts ready for the first couple of days, I've realized that I have not been taking pictures of my breakfast and my lunches, which are generally pretty boring and the same thing over and over again. But even still, I would like to show you what the meals are to help you figure out what to eat and maybe some inspiration. But I haven't been taking pictures, and I apologize. And last night I thought of it. I was like, oh, I got to remember to take them today. But Tuesdays are a very hairy day for us, and I just simply forgot. So I'm sorry. I will work on that for tomorrow. Better late than never, right? Okay, so we'll just let that go for a minute. Let me get a ladle or a big spoon. I'll use a big spoon. It's not slotted, so I can just kind of gently toss my meatballs and make sure the sauce is covering them. My sweet potatoes are in the oven, and they're done, so I just turned the oven off, and I'm going to leave them in there. The reason to serve these meatballs over rice or potatoes, something like that, is because of the yummy sauce. It's really, really good. You want to have some kind of vehicle for that sauce. But of course, you could eat it like soup. You could make the meatballs smaller, bite-sized, and maybe add a little bit more broth, and certainly turn that into turkey meatball soup. That would be really good, and I will probably do that at some point. This guy's a perfect example. Can you see he's getting nice and brown? Just what we want. I could be really particular, and I could go and turn each one over so they each get browned, but I don't need to do that. It'll work itself out. I'm going to taste one for seasoning. I'm going to taste one of these. I'm going to taste my meatball that is cut one in half to make sure they're totally cooked all the way through, and they are. My sauce is just the right amount of thickness. Perfect. I thought I might need to add more salt, but I don't. So it kind of tastes a little bit like that canned tomato soup. That's what it reminds me of. So with a little bit of tang because of the Dijon mustard. And then taste it. I'm so thankful. Alright, we're just going to park this on medium. My potatoes are done, but turned off. My meatballs are done. Okay, everything is done and everybody is home. So the one nice thing about this dinner, actually all of it, can really hold until everybody's home and ready. So I just turned my okra way down low, and like I told you before, I turned the oven actually off on my sweet potato, and I just left my meatballs simmering, and they are just totally fine to sit there. Now, this is really hot. So I cheated a little bit with my sweet potatoes because I think it takes forever for a sweet potato to bake all the way through until it's really soft. So I poked holes in it and wrapped them in a paper towel and microwaved them for 2 minutes. And then I put them in the oven. And then they cooked at 425 in about 30 minutes. So there's half a sweet potato. I find that half a sweet potato is enough for me and really everyone else in my family. So the way I'm going to serve this tonight is I'm going to smash this up, and I'm just going to ladle my meatballs right on top of that. I guess that means I need a ladle. And the sauce will just soak down into my potato. That'll be so delicious. And there's all that yummy sauce, so I might actually just have to have a little bowl of that on the side and eat it like soup, like I told you I was thinking about doing. So here's my okra, nice and browned, very simply just sauteed in the skillet. And there's our dinner for Whole30 Day 17. Got a baked sweet potato, turkey meatballs, and some skillet fried okra. And that's it. I hope you're doing well. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.